Admiral Kriegsvollen of the Galactic Confederation had seen many things in his 300 cycles of service. He had witnessed the fall of entire star systems, negotiated peace treaties with species so alien their very existence defied logic, and personally overseen the integration of 47 different civilizations into the Confederation. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for humanity. The briefing room aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 12 different species filled the crystalline chamber, their various appendages clicking, chirping, and occasionally releasing clouds of what could charitably be called diplomatic stress pheromones. Admiral Kriegsvollen's 6 eyes rotated independently as he reviewed the data pad one final time, his tentacles twitching with barely contained anxiety. "Respected colleagues," he began, his voice translator working overtime to convert his melodic whistles into something resembling universal standard. "We have a problem. A big, violent, teeth-bearing problem." Subcommander Ilex 9, a particularly pompous member of the Hegemony Council, rustled his feather fins dismissively. "Admiral, surely you exaggerate. We have successfully integrated primitive species before. These humans cannot be significantly different from the others." Kriegsvollen's laugh sounded like a dying plasma conduit. "Different? Oh, my dear Ilex, different does not begin to cover it. These creatures evolved on a death world, not metaphorically speaking. Literally, their planet actively tries to kill everything on it, and somehow, these mammals not only survived but thrived." The room fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the occasional nervous click from Ambassador Threlvak's mandibles. "Their gravity is nearly twice our standard," Kriegsvollen continued, warming to his topic. "Their atmosphere contains enough oxygen to be considered mildly explosive by Confederation safety standards. Their weather patterns regularly produce storms that could level our cities, and their tectonic plates shift so violently that continent-destroying earthquakes are considered routine geological events." "Surely," interjected Dr. Plexworton, the Confederation's chief xenobiologist, "their physiology reflects these harsh conditions? Perhaps they are heavily armored, like the Carthul, or possess natural energy shields like the Vexmorians." Kriegsvollen's tentacles performed what could only be described as the galactic equivalent of a facepalm. "No, doctor. They are soft. Incredibly, laughably soft. Their skin can be punctured by thorns from their own planet's vegetation. They require regular intake of dihydrogen monoxide to survive, and their internal temperature regulation is so poor that minor environmental changes can kill them." The confusion in the room was palpable. Ambassador Quinreth of the Silicon Confederacy spoke up, her crystalline form chiming softly. "Admiral, forgive my confusion, but if they are so fragile, how did they survive such a hostile environment?" "That," said Kriegsvollen, "is the terrifying part. They did not just survive. They conquered. Every other species on their planet either serves them, fears them, or has been driven to extinction by them. They reshaped their entire world to suit their needs, and when they ran out of things to kill on their planet, they started killing each other." Dr. Plexworton es optical sensors focussate intently. "Surely you mean they engaged in ritual combat for mating rights or territorial disputes. Many species exhibit such behavior. For thousands of their years," Kriegsvollen continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "they perfected the art of warfare. Not just killing, mind you, but the systematic, organized, creative destruction of their own kind. They developed weapons capable of ending all life on their planet multiple times over. And the only reason they did not use them was because they were afraid of running out of things to fight." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Subcommander Ilex 9 cleared his throat, a sound resembling grinding metal. "Surely, Admiral, contact with our peaceful Confederation has civilized them somewhat?" Kriegsvollen brought up a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. "3 days ago, we sent our finest diplomatic vessel, the Harmony's Call, to establish first contact. The ship was crewed by our most experienced peacekeepers, equipped with universal translators, cultural sensitivity protocols, and enough gifts to satisfy any reasonable species' curiosity about galactic civilization. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. The humans shouted down. The room erupted in shocked chattering, clicking, and various sounds of distress that defied translation. Not immediately. Krixvolan continued once the noise died down. No, that would have been too simple. First, they detected our approach from an impossible distance. Then they attempted to communicate using primitive radio waves, demanding to know our intentions. When Captain Velthorak attempted to explain our peaceful mission, they assumed it was some sort of invasion tactic. Ambassador Threlvac leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic display. What exactly did Captain Velthorak say to provoke such a response? Standard diplomatic greeting protocols. We come in peace, seeking to establish communication with your species and welcome you into the galactic community. Krixvolan's tentacles writhed with what might have been amusement. Apparently, in human culture, this phrase is so overused by fictional invaders in their entertainment media that they immediately assumed we were lying. Dr. Plexwerton's optical array dimmed with confusion. They have fictional invaders in their entertainment. Oh, Doctor, you have no idea. These creatures spend enormous amounts of time and resources creating elaborate fictional scenarios about warfare, invasion, survival, and combat. For fun, their idea of relaxation is watching simulated violence or participating in competitive activities that mirror ancient hunting behaviors. The room had grown uncomfortably quiet. Even the life support systems seemed to be holding their breath. The Harmonies call managed to send one final transmission before it was destroyed, Krixvolan said, his voice heavy with something approaching respect. Captain Velthorak reported that the humans' weapons technology was primitive but devastatingly effective. They used chemical rockets with explosive warheads, guided by computational systems that were crude but surprisingly accurate. And the crew? Whispered Ambassador Quinreth. Vaporized. Completely. The humans do not take prisoners, it seems. They either eliminate threats entirely or... Krixvolan paused, checking his datapad again. They apparently preserve parts of defeated enemies as trophies. Their museums are filled with the remains of creatures they have hunted to extinction. Subcommander Ilex-9 had gone an alarming shade of purple. Admiral, surely you are not suggesting we abandon contact protocols? The Confederation has never failed to peacefully integrate a species. Integration? Krixvolan's laugh was genuinely horrifying now. My dear Ilex, we received another transmission from their planet 6 hours ago. It was not a diplomatic overture. The holographic display changed, showing what appeared to be a small, bipedal creature standing in front of a primitive communication device. The being had no visible natural weapons, armor, or threatening features. It looked almost comically harmless. This, said Krixvolan, is apparently their leader, or one of them. Their species seems to have multiple competing leadership structures, which should theoretically make them vulnerable to divide-and-conquer tactics. The human on the display began speaking, and the universal translator kicked in with a mechanical voice. To whoever destroyed our satellite and killed our people in orbit, this is President Mitchell Kane of the United Earth Defense Council. We know you're out there. We know you're listening. And we want you to know that we are not afraid of you. The human paused, and something in its small, inadequate-looking eyes made several of the assembled diplomats unconsciously retreat toward the chamber's exits. We have been preparing for this day since we first looked up at the stars. We have weapons you cannot imagine, tactics you cannot predict, and a level of creative violence that apparently makes us unique in the galaxy. You killed 12 of our people when you destroyed that satellite. We remember every single one of their names. President Kane leaned closer to the camera, and his voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any roar. You wanted to make contact? Congratulations. You have our attention. But understand this. We do not surrender, we do not negotiate with invaders, and we absolutely do not forgive. You have precisely 72 hours to send representatives to discuss the terms of your surrender, or we will come to you." The transmission ended with the human smiling. It was not a pleasant expression. The briefing room was silent except for the sound of Ambassador Threlvac quietly having what appeared to be a panic attack. "Respected colleagues," Admiral Krixvolen said finally, "I believe we may have made a serious miscalculation." Dr. Plexworton's optical array was spinning frantically. "Admiral, surely they cannot pose a real threat? They have not even achieved faster-than-light travel. Their technology is primitive compared to ours." "Doctor," Krixvolen replied, "primitive does not mean ineffective. These creatures turned pointed sticks into planet-killing weapons in less than 10,000 years. They went from crude chemical rockets to splitting atoms in barely a century. And they did all of this while constantly fighting each other." He manipulated the holographic display, showing Earth's surface covered in lights. "Look at their cities. Massive population centers that should be easy targets for orbital bombardment. But notice the patterns? Those are not random settlements. Those are fortress cities designed with multiple redundant systems, underground networks, and defensive positions that suggest they have been preparing for warfare on a scale we can barely comprehend." Subcommander Ilex-9 was now a concerning shade of green. "Admiral, what are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting," Krixvolen said, his 6 eyes focusing on each of the assembled diplomats in turn, "that we may have just declared war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy." The holographic display shifted one final time, showing long-range sensor data from the edge of Earth's solar system. "Because, my dear colleagues, they appear to be coming to us." On the screen, dozens of crude but functional spacecraft were accelerating away from Earth, their primitive fusion drives burning bright against the cosmic darkness. Each ship was small and elegant, and looked like it had been built by someone who valued function over form and considered safety protocols more like suggestions. "How long?" whispered Ambassador Quinreth. Admiral Krixvolen consulted his calculations one more time, hoping against hope that he had made an error. At their current rate of acceleration, accounting for the fact that they will likely push their technology far beyond safe operating parameters because they apparently have no concept of self-preservation, I estimate they will reach our position in approximately 18 standard days. The room erupted in chaos as every representative began speaking, shouting, clicking, or chemically screaming at once. Through the noise, one voice cut through with crystalline clarity. "Admiral," said Dr. Plexworton, "what exactly are we going to tell the Confederation Council?" Krixvolen looked at the approaching human fleet, then at the assembled diplomats, then at the approaching human fleet again. "I think," he said slowly, "we are going to tell them that Earth did not send diplomats. They sent apex predators in suits." 18 days later, Admiral Krixvolen stood in the command center of the Eternal Dominion, watching his career end in real time. The approaching human fleet had not only arrived exactly when predicted, but they had done something that defied every law of physics, diplomacy, and common sense that the Confederation held sacred. They had demanded to speak to his manager. "Admiral," Communications Officer Blextor announced, his voice cracking like a poorly tuned plasma coil, "the humans are requesting, and I quote, whoever is in charge of this circus to present themselves for negotiations." The command bridge, normally a symphony of efficient alien cooperation, had devolved into barely controlled panic. Officers scurried between stations, their various appendages clicking, whirring, and occasionally emitting small clouds of stress-induced bioluminescence. The main tactical display showed the human fleet positioned in what military experts would later describe as an impossible formation. "How are they doing that?" muttered Chief Tactical Officer Grixmolen, his compound eyes reflecting the impossibility before them. Their ships should not be able to maintain those positions without colliding into each other. The human vessels hung in space like a three-dimensional spiderweb, each ship covering another's blind spots while maintaining firing solutions on every Confederation vessel simultaneously. It was a formation that required split-second timing, perfect communication, and either complete trust in one's allies or complete disregard for personal safety. Knowing what they now knew about humans, Admiral Kriegsvollen suspected it was both. "Sir," engineering specialist Wexcatori called out, her biomechanical interfaces sparking with nervous energy, "our sensors are detecting something unusual about their propulsion systems." "Define unusual, specialist." "They appear to have removed all safety limitations from their fusion drives. Current readings suggest they are operating at approximately 300% of recommended maximum output." Admiral Kriegsvollen felt his primary stomach drop into his secondary stomach. "That should have killed them all." "Yes, sir, it should have. Instead, it appears they have arrived 12 hours ahead of our most optimistic projections and are using the excess energy to power weapon systems that should not exist on ships of their size." The tactical display updated, highlighting the human fleet's armaments. What it showed made every military officer in the command center question their career choices. "Those are nuclear weapons," Subcommander Ilex-9 whispered, his feather fins standing at full alert, strapped to the outside of their ships. "As primary armaments." Dr. Plexwerton, who had insisted on remaining aboard to study the humans, made a sound like grinding metal. "They turned their most destructive technology into ship-to-ship weapons? The radiation alone should make their vessels uninhabitable." "Apparently," Admiral Kriegsvollen said, consulting the stream of increasingly alarming reports, "they have developed personal protective equipment that allows them to function in environments that would kill most of our species instantly. Their ships are essentially flying radiation bombs crewed by creatures who consider toxic exposure a minor occupational hazard." The main communication array crackled to life, and President Mitchell Kane's face appeared on the primary screen. Behind him, the bridge of his vessel looked like a combination of cutting-edge technology and improvised repairs held together with what appeared to be metallic tape and sheer stubbornness. "Admiral Kriegsvollen," President Kane said, pronouncing the alien name with surprising accuracy, "I believe you wanted to talk." The Admiral's tentacles twitched involuntarily. "President Kane, yes. We wish to discuss the unfortunate misunderstanding that led to the destruction of our diplomatic vessel." Kane's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted in a way that made several bridge officers take unconscious steps backward. "Misunderstanding," Kane repeated. "Admiral, let me clarify something for you. You sent an unidentified vessel into our solar system without permission, ignored our attempts at communication, and when we finally got your attention, your captain told us we were being incorporated into your empire whether we liked it or not. That is not, we never intended to imply." Admiral Kriegsvollen began. "Furthermore," Kane continued, his voice maintaining that terrifying calm, "your diplomatic vessel was armed with weapons capable of sterilizing planets. We know this because we analyzed the wreckage." The command bridge fell silent except for the sound of Subcommander Ilex-9 quietly hyperventilating into his breathing apparatus. "Those were standard defensive armaments," Admiral Kriegsvollen protested. "Every Confederation vessel carries them for protection against pirates and hostile species." Kane smiled, and several of the bridge crew actually whimpered. "Admiral, in human culture, when someone approaches your home carrying weapons and tells you to surrender peacefully or be destroyed, we call that an invasion. The fact that you call it diplomacy just tells us that your entire civilization has been doing this to other species for so long that you have forgotten what actual diplomacy looks like." Dr. Plexwerton leaned forward, his optical array focusing intently. "President Kane, surely you understand that the Galactic Confederation represents thousands of species living in harmony?" "We seek only to doctor," Kane interrupted. "We did our homework. Your Confederation has absorbed 47 different civilizations in the past 500 years. In every case, the species in question was given the choice between joining your collective or facing economic and military pressure until they had no choice but to comply." The bridge fell so quiet that the life support systems sounded like thunderstorms. "You are not diplomats," Kane continued. "You are conquerors who have convinced yourselves that you are liberators. The difference is that every other species you encountered was either too primitive to resist or too civilized to fight back effectively. Admiral Kriegsvollen felt a creeping sensation that might have been fear or respect. And you are neither primitive nor civilized? Oh, we are very civilized, Admiral. We have art, literature, philosophy, and mathematical theories that would probably impress your scientists. We also have a 5,000-year history of perfecting warfare against opponents who are exactly as smart, creative, and determined as we are. Kane gestured to something off-screen, and the tactical display updated to show human reinforcement fleets accelerating from Earth, Mars, and what appear to be several asteroid mining facilities. While you were trying to figure out how to handle us, we were building more ships, training more crews, and preparing for the possibility that your confederation might decide to make our incorporation involuntary. Chief Tactical Officer Grix Mullen was frantically updating threat assessments. Admiral, the new sensor data indicates they have weaponized their entire solar system. Those asteroid mining platforms are actually mobile weapons platforms. Their civilian cargo haulers have been retrofitted with military-grade armor and weapon systems. In 18 days, Subcommander Ilex-9 squeaked. Actually, Kane said, apparently able to hear their conversations, "We have been preparing for this possibility since we developed spaceflight. Every human colony, every orbital facility, every deep space mining operation was designed with the assumption that someday we would need to defend ourselves against a technologically superior enemy." The implications of this statement hit the assembled officers like a collapsing star. You have been preparing for interstellar warfare for your entire spacefaring history. Admiral Kriegsvollen asked. Admiral, we have been preparing for warfare our entire existence. The only thing that changed when we reached space was the size of the battlefield. Kane leaned back in his command chair, and for the first time, his expression showed something that might have been amusement. Now, let us discuss terms. Terms, Admiral Kriegsvollen repeated. Your surrender, Admiral. You initiated hostilities by destroying one of our vessels and killing our people. You have threatened our sovereignty by demanding our incorporation into your collective. And you have demonstrated that your confederation is built on the systematic conquest of less militarily capable species. The human president paused, allowing his words to sink in. However, we are reasonable people. We do not wish to destroy your civilization or eliminate your species. We simply want to make it clear that Earth and human space are off limits to your expansion efforts. You cannot be serious, Subcommander Ilex-9 protested. You are one system against thousands. Kane's smile returned, and this time it carried the weight of a species that had clawed its way to the top of a death world's food chain. Subcommander, let me explain something about human military doctrine. We do not fight fair. We do not honor traditional rules of engagement. And we do not stop until our enemies are no longer capable of threatening us or our allies. The main display shifted to show detailed scans of the Confederation fleet's weapons, shields, and defensive systems. We have been analyzing your technology for 18 days. Your shields are impressive, but operate on predictable frequencies. Your weapons are powerful, but require significant charging time between shots. Your ships are fast, but sacrifice maneuverability for straight-line speed. Admiral Kriegsvollen felt his tentacles go numb as he realized the implications. In contrast, Kane continued, our ships are designed to take damage and keep fighting. Our weapons are crude, but can be fired continuously without overheating. Our crews are trained to function effectively even when their ships are falling apart around them. Chief Tactical Officer Grix Mullen was running combat simulations in real time. Admiral, he whispered, the computer models are not encouraging. Furthermore, Kane said, we have taken the liberty of contacting several of the species your confederation has recently incorporated. It seems many of them are not entirely happy with their current situation. The communication display split, showing representatives from a dozen different species, all of whom looked very interested in what the humans had to say. President Kane, Admiral Kriegsvollen said slowly, what exactly are you proposing? Simple, Admiral. You leave us alone, and we will not systematically dismantle your empire by providing military support to every species that wants to leave your confederation. The bridge fell silent as the full scope of the human threat became clear. These creatures had not only refused to be conquered, they were threatening to liberate everyone else who had been conquered. However, Kane continued, we are not unreasonable. We propose a new kind of relationship, true diplomatic contact between equals. Trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than coercion. Cultural exchange programs that do not end with incorporation into a collective. Admiral Kriegsvollen looked around his bridge at officers who were either calculating surrender terms or updating their personal evacuation plans. And if we refuse? Kane's expression did not change, but something in the background of his ship's bridge began glowing ominously. Admiral, we are apex predators who learned to cooperate. We spent millennia fighting each other because nothing else on our planet could provide adequate opposition. You have just given us a common enemy and a cause worth fighting for. The human president leaned forward one final time. We do not want to destroy you, Admiral. But if you force us to choose between your civilization and our freedom, we will choose our freedom. And we will make sure that every other species in the galaxy knows that the choice exists. Admiral Kriegsvollen looked at his officers, at the impossible human fleet, at the growing rebellion among Confederation member species, and at the career that had ended the moment humanity decided to introduce themselves to galactic politics. President Kane, he said finally, I believe we need to discuss new diplomatic protocols. Kane's smile was almost warm. Now you're beginning to understand diplomacy, Admiral. Welcome to the negotiating table. As the two fleets began the delicate process of actually talking to each other instead of talking at each other, Admiral Kriegsvollen reflected on the lessons learned. Earth had not sent diplomats to the galaxy. They had sent teachers. And the first lesson was simple. True diplomacy only exists between equals. The rest of the galaxy was about to get a very comprehensive education. 3 hours into what would later be called the Treaty of Mutual Respect, Admiral Kriegsvollen was beginning to understand why humanity had conquered their own planet so thoroughly. They did not just negotiate, they overwhelmed their opponents with possibilities, alternatives, and contingencies that no sane species would have considered. So let me understand this correctly, Subcommander ILX-9 said, his feather fins drooping with exhaustion. You want to establish trade routes, cultural exchange programs, joint scientific research initiatives, and mutual defense agreements, but you also want to maintain the right to provide military assistance to any Confederation member that requests independence. President Kane nodded cheerfully from the main display. That is correct, Subcommander. We believe in self-determination for all sapient species. If a civilization wants to remain part of your confederation, that is their choice. If they want to leave, that should also be their choice. Dr. Plexwerton's optical array was spinning frantically as he processed the implications. President Kane, you realize that this would fundamentally restructure the entire galactic political system? Yes, Doctor. That is the point. Admiral Kriegsvollen rubbed his temples with 2 of his tentacles while using the other 4 to manage the increasingly complex negotiations. President Kane, the Confederation has maintained galactic peace for over 500 standard years. The system works. Does it, Admiral? Kane's expression grew more serious. Or has it simply prevented anyone from being strong enough to challenge you? Peace through overwhelming force is not peace, it is occupation. The communication display split again, showing more species representatives joining the conversation. Admiral Kriegsvollen recognized delegates from the Velthari Collective, the Maurian Republic, and what appeared to be the entire governing council of the Kethular Empire. Admiral Kriegsvollen spoke Counselor Thexmaron of the Velthari, her crystalline voice chiming with barely contained excitement. We have been listening to President Kane's proposals with great interest. The humans have offered to share their defensive technologies with any species that chooses independence from the Confederation. Subcommander ILX-9 made a sound like a deflating gas giant. You cannot seriously be considering leaving the Confederation after 3 centuries of membership. Subcommander, replied Thexmaron, in 3 centuries of membership, has the Confederation ever asked us what we wanted? Or did you simply assume that incorporation was beneficial because we stopped resisting? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Admiral Kriegsvollen found himself unable to answer because, in all honesty, the Confederation had never bothered to ask. President Kane leaned forward, his expression compassionate but determined. Admiral, we are not trying to destroy your civilization, but we are offering something that your Confederation has apparently forgotten existed: choice. And if we refuse to accept these terms? Admiral Kriegsvollen asked. Though he suspected he already knew the answer, Kane's smile returned, but this time it carried the weight of an entire species that had spent millennia learning how to win wars against impossible odds. Then, Admiral, you will discover why humans never developed a word that translates directly to surrender in any of our languages. The closest we have is tactical retreat, and that is only temporary. Chief Tactical Officer Grixmolen looked up from his displays with an expression of professional horror. Admiral, I have been running continuous analysis of the human fleet's capabilities. They're not just armed for ship-to-ship combat. They have weapons designed specifically for orbital bombardment, planetary siege warfare, and asteroid manipulation. Asteroid manipulation? Dr. Plexworton asked. Kane nodded casually. We learned early in our space development that kinetic weapons are remarkably effective and nearly impossible to defend against. A sufficiently large rock, accelerated to sufficient velocity, can render any planet uninhabitable. We have mining operations throughout our solar system that can redirect asteroids with remarkable precision. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans had not just militarized their fleet, they had weaponized their entire solar system. President Kane, Admiral Kriegsvollen said carefully, "Are you threatening to destroy our worlds?" "Not at all, Admiral. I'm explaining why threatening us would be inadvisable. There is a significant difference." Kane gestured to someone off-screen, and the tactical display updated to show long-range sensor readings from human deep space monitoring stations. We have been tracking Confederation fleet movements for the past 18 days. You currently have battle groups positioned near 14 different systems, including 3 that contain species who have expressed interest in independence. We consider this a provocative military buildup. Subcommander Ilex 9 went an alarming shade of purple. Those are routine patrol deployments. Subcommander, when a species has spent its entire history being invaded by its neighbors, routine patrol deployments look suspiciously like preparation for invasion. We have deployed countermeasures. The display shifted to show human vessels emerging from what had appeared to be empty space near each of the Confederation battle groups. The ships were smaller than their main fleet vessels, but their energy signatures suggested they were carrying weapons that defied several laws of physics. Stealth technology? Admiral Kriegsvollen asked. More like patience and planning, Kane replied. We launched these vessels before our main fleet departed Earth. They have been waiting in position for 2 weeks, powered down and drifting like debris until activated. Engineering specialist Wexcatori was frantically analyzing the sensor data. Admiral, these ships, they appear to be equipped with some form of faster-than-light communication system. They are coordinating their movements in real time across distances that should make such coordination impossible. Kane's expression showed what might have been pride. Quantum entanglement communication arrays. We developed them specifically for military coordination across interstellar distances. Every human vessel, from the largest battleship to the smallest scout, can communicate instantaneously with every other human vessel regardless of distance. The strategic implications hit Admiral Kriegsvollen like a collapsing star. The humans had not just built a fleet, they had built a coordinated military network that could operate across the entire galaxy simultaneously. President Kane, he said slowly, how long have you been preparing for this encounter? Since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there, Admiral. Every human child learns about the possibility of hostile alien contact in primary education. Every human colony is built with defensive capabilities. Every human ship is designed to function as part of a larger military network. Kane paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "We are not a warlike species, Admiral. We are a species that has learned that peace is only possible when everyone involved has the power to defend themselves. Your confederation maintains peace by ensuring that no one else has that power. We maintain peace by ensuring that everyone does." Counselor Thexmaron of the Vel theory spoke up again. "President Kane, what exactly are you offering to species that choose independence? Defensive technology sharing, trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation, and most importantly, the guarantee that you will never again be forced to choose between your sovereignty and your survival." The communication display now showed representatives from over 30 different species, all listening intently to the negotiations. Admiral Krixvolan felt the weight of 500 years of Confederation history pressing down on him. "President Kane, what you're proposing would mean the end of the Galactic Confederation as it has existed." "Yes, Admiral, it would. But it would also mean the beginning of something new. A galaxy where species choose their associations freely, where trade is conducted between equals, and where diplomatic solutions are sought because they are better than military ones, not because military options do not exist." Kane stood up from his command chair, and Admiral Krixvolan noticed that the human leader was smaller and more fragile-looking than most of the species represented in the negotiations. Yet somehow, he dominated the conversation through sheer force of personality and the knowledge that his species could back up their words with actions. "Admiral, we are offering you a choice that no one has offered the Confederation in 500 years. You can adapt to a new way of doing things, or you can try to maintain the old way and discover why humans have never lost a war that we considered existentially important." Dr. Plex Swerton leaned forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his diplomatic training. "President Kane, may I ask what humanity considers existentially important?" Kane's smile was warm, but somehow terrifying. "Our freedom, Doctor. Our right to choose our own path. And now, the right of every other species to make the same choice." Admiral Krixvolan looked around his bridge at officers who were calculating the odds of maintaining the Confederation's traditional authority structure against a species that had apparently been preparing for galactic warfare since before they achieved space flight. The odds were not encouraging. "President Kane," he said finally, "I believe the Confederation Council will need to convene an emergency session to discuss these proposals." "Of course, Admiral. We are reasonable people. You have 72 hours to provide a formal response. And if the Council rejects your terms..." Kane's expression did not change, but something in his eyes shifted in a way that made Admiral Krixvolan remember that humans were apex predators who had learned to cooperate. "Then, Admiral, the galaxy will learn what happens when apex predators decide that diplomacy has failed." The communication ended, leaving the bridge of the Eternal Dominion in stunned silence. Subcommander Ilex-9 was the first to speak. "Admiral, what are we going to tell the Council?" Admiral Krixvolan looked at the tactical displays showing human vessels positioned throughout Confederation space, at the growing list of species expressing interest in independence, and at the fundamental choice that now faced galactic civilization. "We're going to tell them," he said slowly, "that the age of conquest disguised as diplomacy is over, and the age of actual diplomacy is about to begin, whether the galaxy was ready or not."